Welcome to Pep Talks with Eric, where we shift gears from negative feedback loops and drive towards the life we truly want. I'm your host, Eric Ayers. I believe in the power of Ubuntu. I am because we are. Together, we'll explore how connections fuel our growth and create amazing experiences. In this podcast, we'll tune out the noise of the world and tune into what we really want and what really matters. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Pep Talks with Coach Eric. I'm your host, Coach Eric. And okay, our guest today is an incredible human being. I had the privilege of being on his podcast, Heart Talk, and we talked about Ubuntu and the power of I am because we are, and how the plural form of humanity creates an amazing culture. And so we had a great conversation, and I've been looking forward to this conversation for a while now. So Dr. Charles Lee is a plastic surgeon, an incredible human being. He's a humanitarian, and he is the mind behind MindFLOW Ergonomics, which we're going to dive into. But he has a contagious laugh, which happened just before we hit record coming on. And he's just a beautiful soul. And I'm so happy. I'm so grateful to have you on the show. So, Dr. Charles, thank you for joining us, man.
Listen, let me just say off the bat, I've been waiting for this, like waiting for a baby to be delivered, and I want to just, first of all, congratulate you, Eric, for what you're doing. And, you're making such an impact. I love your vibes and the Ubuntu philosophy, and and I think we're all together as one.
Yes.
As we journey through this life. And so once again, thank you. And you've got some incredible guests so far. And so let's just dive in. And I hope that you are at 9:06 a.m. in the morning, and I'm at 9:06 p.m. at night. So when two hearts get together, it's rock and roll time, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the beauty of technology for the sake of humanity is the fact that you're in Malaysia, I'm in East Tennessee, and we can come together and have an amazing conversation that we can share with others to impact them, which is awesome. So before we start diving into our negative feedback loops and these thought patterns that kind of self-destruct, we create self-destruction. In your words, give us a little bit of background of your journey, of what you do and what led to the development of MindFLOW Ergonomics.
Well, Eric, like anything in life, you leave your destiny to your creator. And it's always the destination where we arrive at. So I had a very dysfunctional upbringing in my own life. And I think all of us have histories behind us. Mm-hmm. But it was a journey. It was a journey for me to grow up third in the family, and just trying to become not like my father was my main intention in life growing up. And that was a struggle. It was a struggle because, when you become a doctor, you have this fixed mindset. You go to work, you come back, you go to work, you come back. And then in the Asian context, there's just nothing but to have your family, grow your children, and then drop it and they'll bury you. And that's about it,
Right.
But I had no one until today that I could call a friend except you now, which I've got you on my list. But, growing up, those years were incredibly alone. And I grew up in a family, especially my father was never a kind of a signpost that I could kind of lean on to.
Right.
And that was a struggle for me. So I was always running away all my life. And I lived in a valley of a shadow of death, so to speak, because spiritually I was in a different zone, but growing up was tough for me. But I only knew one thing, and that is I wanted to become a doctor. And I didn't know at the end of the process that I needed healing myself, because the mantra, this thing is that do no harm. But in the process, I had harmed my own self, just not knowing what to do. When people say change, please change, Dad, you have to change. You cannot change what you do not know. And that was my biggest difficulty in life. So it was tough. And And then, I went to India, did medicine, came back. But creativity was always my source of inspiration.
Yeah.
And as a Christian myself, for me, creativity is the currency of the universe. It was right there in the beginning in the Garden of Eden. I mean, just God took this mud ball and breathed into it life, and there was Adam.
Mhm.
But he's a plastic surgeon beyond anything, fully human, fully divine. Because when he created Eve, he took that rib out, and then the Bible says he covered it with flesh. So when I do meet Jesus, I want to know what instruments did he use to cover that wound.
Right, right.
He covered it with flesh. But the beauty about creativity is that when he created Eve, he did not take another mud ball and breathe into it. He took the rib.
Mhm.
And that's why the two became one. Until today, that's the only thing between man and a woman. And as a doctor, you can't have two mud balls walking around saying that they are both
Right,
one, you see.
right.
So my growing up years in college, it was very lonely for me because I didn't have any friends. I only had my shadow of my own self, which I never liked. They always say that mirrors do not lie and shadows do not leave you.
Mhm.
And so that was a struggle, Eric, and growing up. So that was my beginning. It was a very dysfunctional upbringing. I promised myself that I will never become like my father. But, when you're growing up with a lot of scars and they end up with contractures, and as a plastic surgeon myself, I never realized that, you tend to board yourself up and protect yourself because you don't want to get hurt anymore. But when you do that, you find that all the arrows that come at you get reflected off and you hurt the people and there's collateral damage. And that's what
Absolutely.
happened to me because I had no manual, I had no roadmap, I had nothing except the past. And this
Mhm.
is the whole crux of living, Eric. The brain has only one source of information, and that is the past,
Mhm.
nothing else.
Mhm.
And we live with that. And I think that's what has happened to me because that was a journey. And so as I went on, and 40 years in the marketplace, working as a plastic surgeon now, with 3 children, they're all doctors, but it was a very fractured life. And if you were to ask me today, if I were to close my eyes today, and you ask me, Charles, what do you think? What's the end of the line like? And I would say, totally, completely unfulfilled, with regrets because I wish I could do the whole thing all over again
Right.
for what I know now. So there we are, and it's always thankful to be alive, man.
Yeah. Thank you, first of all, for sharing that. And I want to, if you don't mind, comment on something and throw some Eric into and so throw some coaching into this because ultimately, one of the greatest things I heard was that when we have trials, difficulties, and this fractured life that you speak of, it becomes our curriculum to God, right? Our curriculum to the spiritual awakening that we need to become who we are. So that loneliness, yes, it's crazy difficult, and it creates a an idea in our mind that I don't want to be like my dad, like you said. So we have this understanding of not wanting to be like something, which our focus becomes on that subject of that person, that thing, that boss, that friend, that spouse, whatever it is. And then we ultimately become that person because that's where our thoughts are. But the curriculum to that, the loneliness, gives us such a in-depth understanding of that dichotomy of when we do get to the point where we're like, I don't want this anymore, and we start going in the other direction, we have this full understanding of what you speak of, like the gratefulness to be alive can only be truly felt when you understand how lonely it is heading towards not living your life, right?
Absolutely.
So like it's that cyclic approach and that cyclic flow of energy to where it's horrible when you're going through it, and then when you come out of it, it's like that needed to happen for me to become who I am. And all of that you said, and you still have this genuine, beautiful smile, this laugh, this love for life. And it's like an understanding of what Wayne Dyer said. Like, I still have music inside of me that needs to be played. It needs to be shared. I don't want to get to my deathbed and say, I still have music inside of me. Like, that's people's biggest regret. So thank you for sharing your music with us and moving towards what you want, right? I love
Right.
that.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and I love the analogy of the do no harm, because as healthcare providers, we take that and we're like, we're going to do no harm to this patient in front of me, irregardless of the harm that we're causing ourselves, which then, as you mentioned, those arrows go at every loved one that we have, everyone's that's around us. Because for me personally, like I lost the ability to feel emotions because I detached myself from taking care of, pediatric emergency patients. And you can't turn that back on. You can't turn it off, turn it on. It's not a light switch. It's you either want to
Sure.
feel or you're not.
Sure.
And so that do no harm created more harm than I wanted, but that was part of the process, right? So I love this progression here, and thank you for sharing. And so how did this lead into this MindFLOW ergonomics?
Well, that's a journey that that had to cross a number of valleys. but I think you made a statement just now which is powerful, and that is, I don't want this anymore. And how does one come to that situation when you have to cross over and realize? And I couldn't do it because in my kind of setup and growing up in this Asian context, I wish I could have said that a long time ago, but I
Right.
couldn't. And that's because of I owed it to my children. I didn't want them to think of me as a failure and walk out on them.
Mhm.
But I think the rescue is when I was spiritually, blessed. When I found myself, there was a greater purpose than myself.
Yeah.
Um, I've always loved the Lord right from very young. I used to sing all these Jim Reeves songs, and all that was going on. But I couldn't imagine what it was to say, "Our Father who art in heaven," because that was tough for me.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of things that were going on in my life. But when my father died, and when he passed away, and I was going for his funeral, I'm in Sabah, which is East Malaysia. But that really broke me because the Lord revealed Himself through Psalm 2, verse 7, which says, you know, "You are my son, and today I become your father."
Mhm.
And that was a total breakthrough for me. I never wept the way I never knew I could weep that much. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that went on, and finally, on the 22nd of February, 1995, at 5:30 in the morning, I was blessed with the Holy Spirit. I was baptized. I was submerged. I was on fire. I was going all over the place, and so that was a spiritual awakening for me. That I
Mhm.
found that there was a greater purpose, that I wanted to be loved, Eric. My
Mm.
whole life, I
Mm.
struggled because I wanted to be hugged. I wanted to be loved. I wanted someone to come up and tell me, "I love you, Charles. I love you." I mean, no, that you can get married, you can have a family, you can have children,
Right.
but there was a total emptiness inside of me till today, trying to find what's my purpose, what's my destiny, why am I here?
Yeah.
And that was why, on that particular morning at 5:30 a.m., when the Lord revealed Himself and visited me, um, I left my knife. I took my knife, I put it down, and I said, "I want to know you."
Yeah.
And that began a journey. So they've got this whole spiritual journey that has taken me across all muddy waters and through all the valleys of death, telling me that it'll be okay.
Yeah.
See, and that's the reason why I always say today that all those who are listening in your audience and all that, that you got to find that place where eternity meets in the present.
Mhm.
And once you find that place, everything else is possible. And that's how I founded the first Asia Pacific consultation on discipleship, took it to 5 nations. 4,000 people have attended it. Why? Just to know the man Jesus, you see, because he
Mhm.
became personal to me. And so that was the spiritual part of it. But I never changed inside. I didn't know how to do it. I had no friends. I didn't have Coach Eric for me. All right. I didn't have this whole concept. Hey, Ubuntu, go for it. So it was a real struggle, and I kept on running away. I left my home 3 times on the pretext of losing weight, but actually I just wanted to be alone. I was lost, running. Eric, I tell you, I'm 73 now, and I'm still rock and rolling and still operating, but I just wish I could run all the way back. I just wish that there was a time, there was a time capsule that could take you back and tell myself,
Yeah.
there's a better part of me. There's something more to life. And that's the reason why I never like, I'm a plastic surgeon, I just told you.
Mhm.
And I'm not an anti-aging doctor, all right, or a plastic surgeon, because when people come and talk to me and all that, and I say, no, it's about smart aging. How do you age smartly?
Right.
And so too with life. I mean, I think we need to have a better understanding of what life is all about. And I love your Life by Design, because we are created by a designer.
Mhm.
Uh, and he wants the best interest for us. He always has the best interest in his heart for all of us. And so mindset was something I never could fathom, because in the Garden of Eden, the mind was open,
Mhm.
and by causing shame and sin, it closed. And so till today, we're trying to open it. You know what I mean? and that can only be done spiritually, like circumcision of the heart. So I realized that I had come to a stage in life where I had to get out of my mind and go down into my heart. Out of my mind and into my heart. That movement set me free.
Mhm.
And that's how MindFLOW came into being, that I realized that, look, man, I've been living from my mind, when my scripture tells me that the heart is deceitful beyond cure, but that is the wellspring of life is in your
Mhm.
heart.
Mhm.
And that's how MindFLOW, the word, came into being, that we need to be able to flow, like from the Sea of Galilee, flow out,
Right.
mercy flows from your mind. And so when people talk about neuroscientists and they say live from your mind, manifest from your mind, it doesn't make any sense to me that you manifest from your heart, because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also.
Mhm.
And so that was the journey. That's how it all started. And so I left my home, and I've never heard of words like mindfulness, Eric. It was new to me, really. I was wondering, what the heck are these people talking about? And,
Yeah.
and I was like, what's this thing called mindfulness? I know the Lord is mindful of all of us, you know what I mean? And I was doing surgery with a neurosurgeon, and I was called to repair the scalp because he had taken out a part of the bone,
Yeah.
and he was operating and taking out the brain tumor. So I leaned over his shoulder and said, where's the mind? And, and he turned around and looked at me and said, what the heck are you talking about? So at the end of the day, we need to be mindful of who we are
Mhm.
in the eyes of God. That's basically the purpose. And that's how I started the whole thing. I started the Asia Pacific consultation on marketplace mindfulness, because if you don't have the mindfulness of God in the present,
Mhm.
you're actually out of his favor. And that's how it all started. So MindFLOW Ergonomics started because I wanted to get out of my mind into my heart. And I wanted to find out what on earth was going wrong with my life, Eric. You know, in plastic surgery, we spend years and years of our training how not to do it.
Right.
Because the moment you put a scar on it, that's it. You can't reverse it. If I'm doing cleft lip surgery,
Right.
once I've placed the scar on, I can't reverse it. And so I wish we all could have a manual right from the very beginning, how not to live the life that you're not supposed to live,
Right.
and and so and being creativity being the key and the currency of everything in life. I took the words creative and used that as the mnemonics for 7 creative zones. I mean, I've been living for 40 years in a zoned out area. There's a yellow zone here, there's a red zone here, there's a green zone there.
Yeah.
Zoning to me is everything, part of everything. But I found that there's a cognitive psychologist called Gary Klein, and I love his work. And he did a study of all those who live and work in high tension places like, firefighters and, people in the
Right.
police and all that. And how do they react to an immediate trauma whenever there's a fire? What do they do? So he came up with this pattern matching kind of sequence where you can pattern match it. And then they will choose what's the right thing to do. If there's a fire going on, what's the main, you can't split second, you see.
Right.
And then you go into an analytical kind of mode. And so I took that and designed 7 creative zones, because I found that the only way for me to get out of where I was to get into an ecosystem where I could then think carefully how to approach every challenge that faced me.
Right.
Because I was living in a reactive zone. My reactions were all so emotionally charged, Eric, that there was more collateral damage than healing. And then I realized that, our challenges do not define us. It's our responses that define it, how we respond to every situation. And I realized that every time I reacted to a challenge or a situation, if it's my children or whatever, it was always toxic and always angry, always, why? Because I was never happy inside.
Yeah.
And I couldn't take rebellion. I couldn't take anything against me, because I was fighting myself.
Right.
And so I know there are many people, there are CEOs, there are doctors who are just living life because of egomania. I have never seen a psychiatrist or a psychologist in my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, what the hell, But what happened was that I realized, and only now, that there's something called allostasis. And I think everyone should learn this allostasis, where it's about your energy. And how does the body regulate itself to be metabolically efficient?
Right.
You can have all the processes in the world, Eric, but if your brain is metabolically deficient, there's no energy in it and you burn out. And that's what happened, you see, because we all live in stresses. I tell you, the stresses that I went through my life, and I've got it here on a card. All right. So if you tell me how do you get out of it, I'll tell you. Chronic weight issues, inappropriate sexual desires, strained relationships, lack of confidence, insecure financially, sexual dysfunction, financial meltdown, mortgage payments, unable to be intimate with my wife, continuously blamed for the dysfunctional family. This is me. So you've got an audience out there and they're wanting to know Charles Lee, plastic surgeon, what is he reading, man? What kind of life has he lived?
Yeah.
A totally dysfunctional life. And so what happened was, in allostasis, as I was telling you, Eric, and we need to know this, Eric. You are coaching everybody around you. But many of us are living very silently in what is called allostatic overload. See, there's so much of stress, so much of things eating inside quietly, that it's eating away the vessels. It's eating away the nerves. It's eating inside. And I did not know. I did not know for 20, 30 years the stress I was going through, fighting myself, fighting my dad, fighting all these things. Ate up 3 vessels that supply my heart and ended up in open heart bypass surgery. I didn't have a heart attack, but I just was overweight because of emotional eating. And I was so unhappy with myself. And I told the cardiologist, I want to see my heart, which is the worst thing I could have ever said. And I can tell you one thing, when he brought that CT scan angiogram and I looked, there was nothing left. It was like as if rats had eaten my vessels. So if anybody says that emotions are not whole brain events, totally wrong. You see, everything, your feelings, your emotions, everything that you do is whole brain events. So neuroscience is not about the mind. Neuroscience is the brain-body connection.
Correct.
And so everything that was going on in my mind was eating up my heart. And that's how MindFLOW came out, because until you realize that you are living in an allostatic overload, you're going to end up with problems of chronic illnesses. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah. So many different avenues to traverse in right now. First and foremost, yes, our thoughts become things. And when we are overloaded with stress, when we have cortisol that is meant to get us away from something or give us a strength to combat whatever it is that we need. After that, it's meant to relax and us to go back to grazing, right? Just like the animals that we see on the pasture. But when we continually have this overflow of cortisol, it becomes part of our human nature. And then we're creating these negative feedback loops that are by our thoughts. This is the beauty of what you said at an Eric level. I'm going to break it down to an Eric level because we have inputs, we have thoughts, feelings, senses of things coming into the world, and then we judge them. Good, bad, happy, sad. And most of the time, if we're living in this stressful environment, like it's bad, it's fractured, it's negative, and then we keep creating this chemical cocktail to be released, and then which creates our energy and motion. Our emotion reacts to that, like you mentioned. And then as we're reacting, we're experiencing it again and we're repeating it. And we're self-creating this without us even knowing. Something huge to tap into. So a couple of things. One, back to earlier what you said about us being creative beings. Like creativity is at our core. That's where we shine. That's where our genius comes in, right?
Absolutely.
And that is how we are associated with our creator, because our creator created us to be creators. We create, and it starts right here. And this is how we create. The reaction versus response is so huge, because so the life by design idea is, yes, we have a life that is designed for us, and we have the ability to design the rest of our life. So we have choices every day. We can continue to live in this fractured state of loneliness, of, heartache, of regret, or we can shift and we can begin to design the life that we want by understanding. I don't have to know how, I just have to know wow, right? I have to get out of here and I have to get into my heart to start leading this.
Yeah.
So we all have designs. We all have a human design, and 60% of the population is generators, and generators have to respond to the world. That's how they make decisions. That's how I make decisions. I'm an emotional responder, an emotional generator, which means I feel emotions. If I react, I'm automatically setting myself up to be misaligned with my true design self. What God created me to be, I'm already stepping out of alignment. If I pause, all right, what emotion am I feeling? Like really think of this emotion and then respond to this. I'm staying true to who I am and I'm being in alignment and I'm keeping my energy. I'm not just randomly giving my energy out and then getting home and being like, why do I feel so burned out? Well, because I've been writing energy checks all day long, right? Of here. And this is like it's a simple yet very difficult thing to do, is to shift out of reaction and into response, of just catching your thoughts before they leave your mouth of, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm gonna calm here. And when you do that, the cascade effect is what you said. It's the opposite of the destruction that cortisol causes. We start healing at a cellular level. We start restoring our vessels. We start restoring our vitality and our essence. And like, that's a beautiful thing that we have a body that was created to do that, but we can shift that on or off simply and profoundly with our mindset and our mindfulness.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I mean, I think it's powerfully said in what you're saying. But there are two things I want to bring you to what I've really gathered, because I got a scar on my chest, and that scar cost me everything.
Yes.
I think that the for a surgeon to have his chest opened out, it's not something that I would take lightly. But there are two words or two aspects of it. One is called pattern matching, and the other is predictive processing. Pattern matching, like I said, the brain has only one source of information, and that is the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's got nothing else. And it cannot, I mean, while waiting for you, that's fine. I know I'm going to talk to Coach Eric, but the brain can only predict what's going to happen.
Right.
That's the function of it. So for me, what caused this scar on my chest, and all of us are missing it, is to be metabolically efficient. You see, the brain takes about 20% of our energy, it conserves,
Mhm.
And I've got a note down here that I keep on reminding myself 4.7 billion ATPs per second is produced by these neuronal cells. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So all that I'm trying to bring out in MindFlow ergonomics, the word ergonomics is brain ergonomics. How do we work every day within that space of allostasis and homeostasis without burning out and becoming metabolic deficient?
Right.
That's the work of the brain. You see? So when people talk about neuroscience and brain, no, don't forget brain-body connection. I've got a scar on my chest because of things that were going on in my brain.
Right. Right.
All right? And once we get a hang of it, that the brain can only have past patterns. So whenever I'm faced with a challenge, the brain doesn't know what the challenge is but it can only predict by past patterns.
Mhm.
So the more we recognize these past patterns, pattern recognition, then we are able to then switch into rewire them to new patterns of understanding where the response is beautiful and perfect and
Right.
optimal. That's the key. So I realized that I didn't know what the heck was going on because I didn't realize that instead of reacting in my old past patterns, because that's all the brain knows, the past, I can rewire now with new responses. And that's where these 7 creative zones come in.
Gotcha.
And one of those zones is my go-to zone, which is called the zone of resplendence. Okay, so you got the CREATIVE. So it's creativity, resplendence, emotional spirituality, and then there's tolerance, and then there's intention, and then there is visioneering, and finally ergonomics. So ergonomics is, I use a lot of ergonomics because of breast augmentation.
Mhm.
Whenever I choose a breast implant, it's got to be ergonomically perfect to work within that space in the breast.
Right.
So the patient can do whatever she wants, and it's ergonomically fitted into the breast, you see. So
Right.
same with the brain. Brain ergonomics means how can I use the metabolic energy that is sufficient for all outputs without burning out, without my brain going into a negative deficiency.
Mhm.
That's the key to living an optimal life. And so as a plastic surgeon, I came up with the mnemonics for ROSE, beauty, response optimization system ergonomics. And I can tell you one thing, Eric, when I've got a challenge today, I go into the zone of resplendence. I hit the sunset by the beach. I sit down there and I get back my zoning in from allostatic overload, coming back to where
Yeah.
it's supposed to be. And that's a real, it's been a big, because it worked for me personally. That's why I wrote it up.
Yeah.
Awareness, mindfulness, all these things are zones that we can zone in.
Right. And to your point, they don't come with manuals. Like life doesn't come with manuals. So
absolutely,
that's the
The
beauty.
yeah, you're right, and that's why I love your Ubuntu,
Yeah.
because you're predicting. And I can tell you one thing, the person that took a lot of my energy from me, and I took a lot of energy from him, is my son, my eldest son, because that's where all the problems are going on. And so when you talk about community and people together, we suck out each other's metabolic energy instead of building.
Right. Right.
And if we realize that, then we realize, hey, the same pattern is playing the same game.
Mhm.
Time to rewire. That's why it's the renewing of your mind. Do not conform to the patterns of the world, but by the renewing of your mind. And that's where the rewiring comes in. New pathways.
Yeah.
You got to learn. And I got this whole program now called 1 Zone a Day, because there are 7 zones.
Mhm.
And so if you're not willing to build and learn and build and learn, you got no default mode. You'll go back to the reaction mode.
Right. Right. Oh, I
mean, you're gonna love life, man.
absolutely. I totally agree with that.
It's a pretty. I'm living and loving life at 73 years of age. Damn, I wish I could rewind it.
Yeah, but 2 things. Like, one, you don't look 70. You have the energy and the vitality of
Well,
someone
I
half
surround
your
myself
age.
with beautiful women. That's why.
That's the key. That's the key. No, I love that because it's a brilliant way to put it, of our mind, our brain interprets our past, right? It predicts the future. Like Joe Dispenza talks about this as well. But the interesting thing is like how it does this. So to dive in even deeper is when we have a thought, like when we're faced with something and we bring in the past of a similar experience, it's the judgment that our brain makes on that situation, on that subject, that creates the prediction. Like we're judging everything. And then once we do that, it's thrown into our subconscious, and that's how the habit is formed because it becomes habitual. So shifting our judgment, like that's the beauty of the response of sitting here and saying, wait. No, I used to just think that my daughter is coming after me, but wait, no. She must have something going on. How can I serve her in this moment? And all of a sudden things shift, and it's like my energy goes towards her instead of sucking her energy out and just throwing my energy to her. And then all of a sudden it's human connections form because this Ubuntu spirit starts coming in. And I wish I could do this every single time I met with something, but my past shows up quite often of a predictable future.
So it has.
Yeah. And the beauty is recognizing it, even if it's in the middle of a tantrum and you're like, wait, what? Stopping. I choose to respawn differently. And that shocks your neural network into what the hell just happened? Like, what? And then we can start rewiring and repatterning.
There you go.
And something that I have learned and continue to learn is self-forgiveness of this is a dang journey, and it didn't take me a day to get to where I am to react. It's going to take me longer than a day to rewire this. Be easy on ourselves and be gentle and ask forgiveness for yourself and from others. And that goes a super long way.
I mean, that is beautiful because, recognizing where you are at that point in time and
yes,
and moving into a different zone where you're rewiring. And remember, neurons, when they're wired together, they fire together.
Yep.
So when you have your new neurons in a new zone, they will fire, and you'll be living from a different place altogether. And I think this is the key for life, that a lot of people say to do this and do that and coaching and all that. But if you do not recognize where you are at that particular point in time, it's going to be a struggle. Because I've been there. I know what it is to live in the valley for so many years without somebody coming up and talking or whatever. No. It was totally alone, eating from inside. And I think that you made a very powerful statement just now that we got to know when to change, because life is full of transitions. And William Bridges, powerful, he wrote this book called Transitions, making sense of life's changes. And so we all go through transitions in life. But the question is, how do we make sense of it, where we are?
Right.
And so for me, when I came up with this whole concept of MindFLOW ergonomics, is you come to a decision in your life where you realize that it's no more reaction, it's how you respond. And so Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel laureate who wrote the book, Thinking Fast and Slow. And beautifully, he comes with these two metaphors, Eric. He talks about system 1 and system 2. And system 1 is our default system, which is the reactive mode, instinctive, very impulsive, and the damage is collateral, and there's a lot of emotional content to it. Whereas system 2 is more of composed, deliberate, conscious effort, and that's where you talked about pausing, thinking carefully. And so interestingly, system 1 whispers to system 2 all the time, and that's your past patterns.
Ooh.
You understand? Whenever you come up with a challenge, the past is telling you, you've been there before, man. Be careful. Right. Yeah. And so you need to be able to swing out into this mental simulation model that I came up with, where I can go to any of the zones because I've studied it, I've built it. The whole body is full of systems. So I believe that you build system, not just set goals. In other words, if you build this system every day with one zone, you'll be able to live it anytime and any challenge. The question is, how do we make sense of it? So, it's It's great, man. I just wish I was your neighbor.
Me too. Me too. Our wives would probably get upset because we'd be spending all our time together, like
Yeah,
figuring
right.
out
What's wrong with these guys?
the mind heart connection and flow. I love you said something super powerful in there that you know it's not about just the goal, but it's the system and the daily practice to get to that goal. And my first thought was like when you're doing like a cleft lip repair, if your goal is simply to attach a split set of tissue, then you are going to close that gap and you are going to be successful from that point. But there is a system in cleft lip and repair, right?
Absolutely.
And the goal is way beyond just what you see. So
Absolutely.
it's like, all right, creating this goal, but going deeper and enjoying the system that is involved in order to expand beyond the goal, because the goal is what we can see, the where we think we want, but there's a bigger picture. So
Absolutely.
like do no harm. If my goal is to do no harm, the actual is I am doing no harm to no living being. So and that goes beyond our ability to see the goal in front. So pausing there, systems over goal setting.
No, well, but let me just dive into that one because you took my passion. I found myself when I was doing cleft lip surgery. That was when I found myself. The creativity was alive in me.
Ooh.
And all those children I did 25 years ago are going to university now. And so when I see them and some of them have been searching, who is the plastic surgeon who did them when they were 3 months old? You realize that, life is a gift. How we live our life is our gift to God.
Yes.
And when I see these children now and their body, their face, their structures all growing, it's amazing what you can do and what the Creator can do more to all of us. You see, he's the end product.
But he did that through you. And think of the life that you enhanced, the lives that have been enhanced because of the creative work that you've done. I mean, dude, that is incredible. Like I could feel that when you were sharing that story. That's absolutely beautiful. That is human connection. That is humanity at its core.
That's right. And yet you can live a life that's totally barren on the inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the beauty of life when you realize that you can have a broken vase and yet put it back together, and he can do it. You can't do it of yourself. But it's the recognition that these past patterns can bury you and they're self-destructive. And the moment you realize that that's the wrong way to go, be bold enough to rewire it and renew your mind to the right set. And this is one way of doing it. These 7 creative zones that we came up with. I mean, look, this Ubuntu is contagious, man. I mean,
it is contagious. I remember the first time I saw it, I was blown away at, and I was introduced to it from a leadership standpoint of, I grew up in a healthcare culture, like most that are in healthcare, most cultures in business of, you might not really hear the things that you're doing good, but you most certainly are going to hear when you mess up. And
absolutely.
And that's like a lot of people's stories as well. That's why the affirmation and mantra of I am enough is so powerful, because we get to a point where life has beaten the worthiness out of us, or we've allowed it to be beaten out of us. And we get to a point where we feel unworthy, and it's no, I am enough. And that is the power of Ubuntu, is it creates a culture of worthiness to where everyone's attributes can start creatively working together.
Absolutely.
And so I'm glad it's contagious. I can't take credit for it. But I'm so grateful to have been introduced to it and then expanding into other avenues.
Sure. I mean, I am enough, but I was created for more.
Mm-hmm.
And that hunger for more is where it'll take you to your next level. And
absolutely.
Your next level.
And you're enough to keep expanding and
Yeah,
creating and
absolutely.
going to meet your full capacity. And everyone listening here is more than enough to exceed your own expectations and to meet whatever it is that you're meant for, and you're all meant for greatness, like incredible greatness.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're perfect. You've hit it right on the nail because but we must be always conscious about the metabolic efficiency of the
I
body, the
love that.
brain.
Mhm.
Because if you do not feed it and make sure that it is within that level of allostasis,
Yes.
you end up with an overload which can kill. And I'm a cool testimony for that because when I saw the CT scan of my three main vessels to my heart,
Yeah.
they were just eaten away, eaten, you know, like as if a rodent had had a good meal of it.
Yeah.
And it's just because the stresses of life, alone, keeping it in and not being able to understand how to handle it.
Yeah.
And this is the message for everybody out there that, you got to, the brain is always remembering. That's all it does. It's
Mhm.
remembering and remembering and remembering. And I love the way Daniel Kahneman talks about the two selves, the remembering self and the experiencing self.
Right. Right.
And so every time we experience something, we got to remember that the brain can do nothing, but it will just collect it as the past.
Mhm.
That's all it has as reference point.
Mhm.
So what you are doing in your life in coaching and design is creating new reference points that are
Right.
moving on forward. And I think that's beautiful. I mean, that's beautiful.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you. And what I love about the story of your heart surgery is a lot of people go through this and then they come out as victims. They come out as, well, why does this happen to me? This shouldn't have happened to me. And then they repeat the same cycle that got them to that point.
Absolutely. That's it. That's patterning. That's
Yes,
pattern
Pat.
matching.
And you were saying, wait a minute, I had a role in this. I How can I change this? And bam, you got your power back. And you're like, I'm going to use my power to shift into the opposite of whatever this was, because this is self-destructing. This is not self-serving
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the
I
way
mean,
that I needs. So let's shift.
right. Yeah, no, what shift? I tell you something, it's not me getting my power back. But what happened was, for the 2 weeks when I was told that I needed to have my chest opened out and some new wires put in and new pathways and new,
Yeah.
highways, new highways channel in on a 101, it's like the Palisades have gone on fire. A fire can only keep on burning until there's nothing left to burn.
Right.
So my vessels were totally gone. But, for 2 weeks, like Jacob, I wrestled with God.
Mhm.
I wanted a sign, Eric. I wanted a sign because I've already met the man,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeshua HaMashiach ben David. That's his name.
Yeah.
And I wanted a sign. And I just kept every day, give me a sign that you're going to be with me. Give me a sign. It went on for 2 weeks. Nothing. Eric, nothing. Until the day of surgery, as a surgeon myself, got me onto the trolley, the bed, they were wheeling me. And I had my headphones on and I was listening, And then I passed through something called the intensive care unit.
Yeah.
And I saw the words up there with the initials, I see you.
Mhm.
I caught that. And that's the name of the memoir I'm writing. I see you.
Beautiful.
And I've been there for many times. I've had my patients in there, but it never was personal until
Yeah.
that final moment before
Yeah.
I went in. And that was a confirmation from God. I see you. So when I went in, the anesthetist came in and said, Charles, are you ready? I said, shut up and get it on then. So,
Oh,
so that
beautiful.
was the power that took me on for the last, 14 years, and I'm still alive. Thank God.
Yeah. And
Um,
and I'm super grateful for that cardiac surgeon. And
oh, yeah. Yeah, that's
because
right.
like I am so grateful to have this conversation with you and to
Yep.
learn with and from you. And yeah, that what a beautiful story to end this on. I'm gonna is there anything else you would like to share that we haven't covered?
No, as I said, that we got to make sure that we understand the metabolic efficiency of
Yeah.
our brain. I think that's very important. And for me, the words of George Orwell always carries me through. Is it's perhaps one did not want to be loved so much as to be understood, and I think that's very important in life. That to be understood is more important than anything else.
Yeah.
And I want to just thank you, Eric. I mean, it's like what 10 o'clock at night here. I feel the day just started.
Yeah, it is. It is. And what a great way to start my day. So thank you for that. Charles, if someone wants to find you, if they're like, wait a minute, this resonates, I need to chat with him, or I need to get some of his resources, where can they find you?
Well, MindFLOWergonomics.com.
Okay.
Well, that would be the website. And then, of course, Heart Talk with Dr. Charles Lee on YouTube.
Okay.
That's another way. We've got my conversation with you. But that's the best is the website. And I'm in the process of writing the book now. So, but at the end of the day, it's about our responses. How do we respond to every challenge
Absolutely.
to make it right? Because that's the source of an optimal life.
I love it.
And I love you too. So you take care, man.
You as well. And we're going to have all your contacts information in the description. So,
thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I love it.
I enjoyed every bit of it. I mean, it's time to play Elvis Presley. It's now or never.
Guys, thank you for joining us for this amazing episode. I love these conversations. I could do this all day long. If you are looking to transform wherever you are, and you just know that you're meant for something greater, I'm doing a 6-week journey of transformation. Reach out to me. I'm happy to help you through uncovering your gifts, what you're here to do, and re-tap into what we chatted about, this mind-heart connection, this out of your mind into your heart, flowing into your true understanding of who you are. So if this resonates with you, please share it and please subscribe. And man, Dr. Charles, thank you again. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Coach. Take care.
Guys, have an amazing week. And I'm looking forward to the next episode. Until then, be well, be loved. Thank you for joining me on Pep Talks with Eric, where together we shift our focus, embrace connection, and drive towards a more fulfilling life. Remember, it's not just about where you're headed, but how you choose to travel along the way. As you continue your journey, know that you have the power to change lanes and focus on the path that leads to positivity, purpose, and connection. Let's stay connected and continue empowering your journey one commute at a time. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. And until then, be well, be loved.